The wrestling world, with its glittering lights and larger-than-life personas, hides behind its vibrant exterior a deeper, often darker truth. At the heart of this world is the unyielding ambition, the sacrifices, and the lives transformed, sometimes for the better, sometimes forever scarred. Among the most remarkable and resilient individuals in this world is Leva Bates. Better known as Blue Pants to some, she is just another name in the ring, a competitor who once donned a pair of simple blue pants. To others, she is a symbol of perseverance, struggle, and the quest for respect in a notoriously unforgiving industry. Leva Bates' journey from an unknown aspiring wrestler to a pivotal force in the wrestling world is a narrative that defies the conventional, shattering the stereotypes that often accompany women in sports entertainment. Her story is one of grit, resilience, and self-discovery. A woman who refused to be just a side note in the history of professional wrestling. In the world of wrestling, where athletes are often defined by their gimmicks and personas, Bates did not rely on overt sex appeal or flashy, stereotypical characters. She carved her niche with something more powerful, a sense of authenticity. Her blue pants, a seemingly unremarkable item of clothing, became the symbol of something far more profound, the unrecognized and uncelebrated heroes who worked tirelessly behind the scenes, making a difference not through grand gestures, but through unwavering determination. But who is the woman behind the blue pants? To understand Leva Bates is to understand the often overlooked undercurrents of the wrestling industry. The world may have known her for her quirky and distinct look, but beneath the surface was a fighter who would go to great lengths to prove herself, to fight for respect, and to create her own identity. This documentary is not just about wrestling. It's about a woman who grew up in a world that did not always know how to appreciate her contributions. It's about her battle to claim her space and to ultimately define what it meant to be a woman in a space that was not designed for her. It's about blue pants as a symbol of how perseverance, authenticity, and unwavering passion can turn the impossible into reality. Her rise from a small-time competitor to a respected name in the wrestling world is not only inspiring, but a testament to the power of fighting for your place in the world. This documentary, The Dark Side of Blue Pants, aims to shine a light on the trials, triumphs, and untold stories of one of the most unique figures to ever step foot in the ring. In the coming pages, we'll dive into Leva Bates' world, unearthing the pivotal moments, the personal sacrifices, and the behind-the-scenes struggles that built her into the wrestling icon we know today. This is the untold story of Blue Pants, the real journey behind the blue pants. Leva Bates' story begins long before the lights of the wrestling ring ever shone on her. To understand the essence of who she is as a performer and a person, we must look back at her early life, her childhood, the influences that shaped her, and the experiences that laid the foundation for her to embrace the world of professional wrestling. Born into a world that didn't initially seem to have a place for her ambitions, Leva grew up in a modest family where dreams of grandeur were often tempered by the daily struggles of life. Raised in the Midwest, she was far removed from the glamorous world of professional wrestling. Yet, from an early age, it was clear that Leva had an unshakable desire to carve out her own path, one that didn't necessarily follow the status quo. Her family, though not directly involved in wrestling or the entertainment industry, had its own share of resilience. Leva was raised by parents who valued hard work, self-reliance, and the importance of education. In an environment where dreams often seemed distant, they pushed her to pursue her passions with a sense of determination and purpose. It was here, in this blend of hard-working roots and a relentless yearning for something more, that the seeds of her wrestling career were planted. Leva's early love of sports and storytelling often collided. She wasn't just drawn to the action of athletic competition, but also to the characters and the larger-than-life personas that shaped those worlds. She found herself captivated by the theatrics of professional wrestling, where athletes didn't just fight, they told stories, played roles, and, in some cases, became larger-than-life figures. Wrestling wasn't just about the matches. It was about becoming a living, breathing character, one who could captivate audiences and draw them into a compelling narrative. From an early age, Leva was no stranger to overcoming challenges. As a child, she was often told that girls weren't meant to be as involved in tough sports like wrestling. She was expected to follow conventional paths, pursue academics, play the role of the good girl, and stay within the prescribed limits of what society expected from her. But Leva was determined to follow her heart, even when it meant pushing against the norms and expectations placed on her. Her teenage years were filled with an array of interests, from a deep love of comic books to a growing desire to be a performer in some capacity. It was during this period that she first encountered professional wrestling as a form of entertainment that blended physicality, storytelling, and spectacle. The more she watched, the more she realized that this world was calling to her, a world where she could combine her love for athleticism with her need to tell stories. But like many who dream of the spotlight, Leva's early years were marked by self-doubt and a lack of guidance. There was no clear road to success, and the notion of making it as a professional wrestler seemed impossible. She wasn't built like the typical wrestling superstar, and her body type didn't match the traditional image of a wrestler in the minds of fans and critics alike. She wasn't the tallest, the biggest, or the most muscular, and, as a result, often felt invisible in a space dominated by larger-than-life figures. But Leva had something far more powerful than physicality. She had a deep internal drive. She realized early on that her uniqueness, her passion, and her ability to create a character and tell a story were just as important as raw strength or size. She was determined to prove that a wrestler didn't need to fit a mold to succeed. They simply needed to be authentic, dedicated, and willing to take risks. At this time, Leva began attending wrestling events with an almost reverential awe, watching the superstars of the era with wide eyes. She was not only in awe of their athletic abilities, but of their capacity to connect with an audience. Wrestling, to her, was about far more than physical confrontations. It was about building relationships with fans, making them care, and ensuring that each move in the ring was a part of a larger narrative. But even though the desire to be a wrestler was growing stronger each day, the path to actually becoming one was far from clear. For most of Leva's early life, there were no mentors to guide her, no obvious connections to the world of professional wrestling. The journey to the ring was going to be something she would have to forge herself, step by step. It was during these formative years, when she struggled with feelings of isolation and self-doubt, that Leva began to develop the resilience that would become the cornerstone of her future success. She spent countless hours watching wrestling matches, studying the ways wrestlers built their characters, learning from their successes and their mistakes. Her bedroom, more often than not, was filled with wrestling memorabilia, comic books, and stories of heroes who faced insurmountable odds and triumphed. As the years passed, Leva's obsession with wrestling only grew. But in order to make her dream a reality, she needed to take bold action. She couldn't wait for an invitation to the world of wrestling. She would have to create the opportunity for herself. This burning desire to break free from the confines of expectation pushed her to take risks. She sought out local wrestling schools, watched tutorials online, and even started training on her own in the quiet corners of her life. It wasn't easy, and the world of wrestling was as intimidating as it was exciting. The industry was harsh, and few women had broken through the barriers that kept them from becoming more than just side characters. Yet, Despite all the obstacles, Leva remained undeterred. She knew that the only way to prove herself was to put in the work, endure the setbacks, and persevere through the uncertainty. Her early years in wrestling were not marked by instant success, but by a dedication to constant improvement and self-discovery. Slowly, she built the skill set needed to compete at a professional level, all the while refining the character that would later become Blue Pants, a symbol of someone who fought for their place in a world that didn't always seem to want them. Leva Bates' early life is a tale of struggle and self-determination. It is the story of a girl who refused to let the world dictate her future, who stood up to the voices that told her she couldn't, and who began a journey that would ultimately redefine what it meant to be a woman in professional wrestling. Her early influences, the challenges she faced, and the passion she nurtured would become the foundation upon which she would build a legacy. The world of professional wrestling would come to know her as Blue Pants, but before that, she was simply Leva Bates, a dreamer, a fighter, and a woman destined to make her mark. Leva Bates, before she became the icon known as Blue Pants, was an outsider looking in. The world of professional wrestling seemed like an impossible dream, a place where only the biggest and the strongest thrived, leaving little room for someone like her. But the burning desire to be part of that world, to become something more than just a spectator, pushed Leva to make her move, albeit cautiously at first. Her journey into wrestling didn't begin with grand promises or opportunities. It began with small, determined steps. Leva had already spent years studying the craft, watching every match she could, and learning the intricacies of storytelling in the ring. She had absorbed everything she could about the legends, the moves, the showmanship, and the business side of the industry. But even with all this knowledge, she knew that her first step into the ring would be a hard one. This was a world that didn't come easily to newcomers, especially women. At the time, women in wrestling were often relegated to secondary roles. They were either the valets, the managers, or the eye candy, who were mostly there to serve as a backdrop for the male stars. There were few women who had achieved mainstream success, and even fewer who were seen as equals in the ring. Leva knew this, but it didn't deter her. In fact, it made her more determined to carve her own path, one that would make people see her for her talent and not her appearance or gender. Her first serious attempt at wrestling training came when she enrolled in a local wrestling school. It wasn't a big, glamorous place. There were no celebrity coaches or legendary figures mentoring the trainees. It was just a small, somewhat worn-down gym with a ring in the center and a few passionate wrestlers and trainers who believed in the craft. This humble beginning marked the first real test of Leva's resolve. The early days were not easy. Training was grueling. There was pain, exhaustion, and plenty of self-doubt. But there was also growth. Leva learned the basics, the fundamentals of wrestling that would lay the groundwork for everything that would come after. She learned how to fall, how to move, how to tell a story with her body, and how to create an emotional connection with an audience, even when she was still in the process of learning how to stand out. But perhaps the most challenging part of this early journey was finding her voice. Wrestling was not just about performing physical moves. It was about creating a character, a persona that the audience could connect with. Leva spent months experimenting with different looks, different gimmicks, and different personalities. Some felt forced, others didn't resonate. It took time for her to understand who she truly wanted to be in the ring. She tried out various personas, but none of them truly felt like her. It wasn't until Leva had embraced the idea of playing something simple, yet undeniably herself, that she began to find her place. This was when the idea of Blue Pants was born, a character that was quirky, funny, and a little bit different, but still undeniably a fighter. The name itself wasn't some grand revelation. nor was it meant to be symbolic of anything particularly deep. It was just a pair of blue pants, something so simple. Yet it became the cornerstone of Leva's identity in the ring. What started as a playful, almost silly idea became her trademark. For Leva, blue pants wasn't just a gimmick. It was a way to show the world that she didn't have to be like everyone else to be successful. She didn't have to conform to the expectations placed on women in wrestling, nor did she have to follow the conventional standards of beauty or strength that were expected from most wrestlers. Instead, she would stand out by being herself, genuine, relatable, and unafraid to break the mold. As Leva's journey progressed, she began to make a name for herself in local promotions. Though still very much in the early stages of her career, she was starting to garner attention for her unique character and her determination. However, success did not come overnight. There were many setbacks. There were matches where she would be overlooked, where she would lose in humiliating ways, and where she would question if she was even cut out for this life. The wrestling world is harsh, and no amount of preparation could have truly prepared her for the challenges that lay ahead. Leva's first few years in the business were marked by a constant balancing act between finding her place and staying true to herself. At times, it felt like the world was trying to force her into a box she didn't fit. But there was something that kept her going, a deep love for the sport and an undeniable belief in her potential. Even when the going got tough, she kept training, kept fighting, and kept pushing forward. One of the key lessons Leva learned during this period was how important it was to find a supportive community in the wrestling world. Early on, she often felt isolated. Wrestling, especially for women, could be a cutthroat environment, and there were times when it felt like no one cared whether she succeeded or failed. But over time, Leva formed relationships with other wrestlers, both male and female, who became her mentors and her support system. These friendships would later prove to be invaluable, not just in terms of practical advice, but also as emotional support when she faced moments of self-doubt. One significant breakthrough came when Leva had the chance to compete in bigger promotions, even if only in a small, backstage capacity. It wasn't yet the limelight, but it was exposure, and for someone like Leva, that meant everything. She knew that she had to prove herself on a larger stage, where the spotlight was more intense and the expectations even higher. The transition from local circuits to the larger wrestling promotions was daunting, but it was the next step in her journey. During this period of growth, Leva learned one of the most important lessons in her career, that wrestling was as much about the audience as it was about the performer. You could have the best moves in the world, but if you didn't connect with the crowd, none of it mattered. This understanding shaped the way she approached every match from that point forward. She knew she had to be authentic. She had to engage. And she had to create a story with every step she took inside the ring. Leva Bates' early days in wrestling were not glamorous, and they certainly weren't easy, but they were filled with lessons, growth, and moments of quiet but powerful success. Her perseverance through those initial struggles, combined with her unwavering belief in herself and her character, set her on a path that would eventually lead her to become the blue pants that the wrestling world would come to know and love. In these early years, Leva laid the foundation for everything that would come next. She was no longer just a dreamer watching from the sidelines. She was a fighter, a creator, and someone who was ready to prove her worth in an industry that demanded nothing less than total commitment. And although the journey was just beginning, Leva was starting to see the first glimpses of the success and recognition that would ultimately define her career. Leva Bates' journey from the local wrestling circuits to national recognition was not one of overnight success, but rather a story of perseverance, adaptation, and finding the perfect moment to shine. She began as a somewhat obscure name, wrestling in small venues, often in front of small crowds. Yet, through sheer determination and relentless effort. She would eventually carve out a place for herself in the professional wrestling world, becoming a beloved and respected figure in the industry. The rise of Blue Pants was not merely about stepping into the ring and putting on a good show. It was about creating an identity that resonated with wrestling fans across the world. The journey to fame was a complicated one, fraught with obstacles and setbacks. But it was also a testament to Leva's unique combination of talent, charisma, and authenticity. In the early stages of her career, Leva faced significant challenges. Wrestling, at its core, is an industry that thrives on spectacle, on larger-than-life personalities, and on unforgettable performances. It's easy to get lost in the noise, to become just another face in a crowded roster. But Leva was determined to rise above that noise and make herself known. It wasn't going to be easy, and she knew that she had to find a way to stand out in a way that felt authentic to who she was. The turning point in Leva's career came when she was offered a spot in the independent wrestling circuit, a major leap forward from her previous experiences. This new opportunity meant a larger stage, bigger crowds, and more visibility. It was a test of everything she had worked for, the perfect chance to showcase the talent and character she had been developing over the years. Leva knew that this was her moment, but she also understood that she had to be more than just a wrestler to make it in this world. She needed to create a persona that would resonate with the audience and leave a lasting impression. It was during this time that the Blue Pants character truly took form. Leva had always been creative and keen on experimenting with different looks and gimmicks. But it was in this new environment that she found the freedom to fully embrace the quirky, offbeat persona that would come to define her. The character wasn't just about wearing blue pants. It was about being someone who stood out from the crowd, who was unapologetically different, and who had the energy to match the intensity of the audience. The initial reception to Blue Pants was mixed. Some fans found the character charming, while others saw it as an oddity. But what was clear from the start was that Leva had something different, a connection to the audience that wasn't based on traditional expectations of beauty or strength, but rather on personality and relatability. Blue Pants was quirky, fun, and approachable, qualities that made her beloved by many, especially in a wrestling world that was often defined by intimidating figures and aggressive personas. Leva's character was a breath of fresh air, providing fans with someone they could root for not because she was the strongest or the most dominant, but because she was the most genuine. Blue Pants wasn't about pretense or flash. It was about being true to oneself. And this authenticity struck a chord with fans. In this phase of her career, Leva Bates experienced her first taste of fame. She began to be recognized in the industry for her unique character and her ability to connect with the crowd. But fame didn't come easily. Leva had to prove herself over and over again, facing fierce competition from other up-and-coming wrestlers who were also vying for attention. There were nights when she felt overlooked, when her character seemed to be lost in the shuffle of larger-than-life personalities. But rather than retreating, she embraced every moment, even the tough ones, knowing that each challenge was just another opportunity to prove her worth. Her rise to fame wasn't just about making an impact in the ring. It was about creating a lasting presence in the hearts and minds of the fans. Leva's ability to engage with the audience, to make them laugh, to make them care about her character, set her apart from the rest. Wrestling is as much about the story as it is about the athleticism. And Leva understood that in ways that many of her peers did not. She wasn't just fighting for victories in the ring. She was fighting for recognition, for respect, and for a place in a world that didn't always seem to have room for her. One of the most defining moments in Leva's rise to fame came when she made her appearance on a larger, more prominent wrestling promotion. Her time on this platform gave her exposure on a national scale, thrusting her into the spotlight and allowing her to showcase Blue Pants to a much wider audience. It was here that the character of Blue Pants truly exploded into the public consciousness. In the larger wrestling promotion, Blue Pants became a fan favorite, and Leva's popularity skyrocketed. She was no longer just a small-town wrestler trying to make a name for herself. She was a bona fide star. Her appearances garnered attention from fans all over the world, and the once quirky persona of Blue Pants began to take on a life of its own. Merchandise featuring the iconic Blue Pants flew off the shelves, and fans started chanting her name at events, eagerly awaiting her return to the ring. The breakthrough moment for Leva came when she was featured in a high-profile match that put her front and center in the wrestling world. It wasn't just her athleticism that earned her recognition. It was her ability to captivate the crowd, to bring the audience into her story, and to make them care about her journey. Blue Pants became more than just a character. It became a symbol of the everyman, or in this case, the everywoman, who fought for a chance, who struggled to be taken seriously in a world that wasn't built for her, and who, against all odds, was beginning to make her mark. The attention she received after this match propelled her to new heights. Leva was no longer just a wrestler. She had become an icon. Fans began to recognize her at events, asking for autographs and taking pictures with her. But the fame she experienced wasn't just about the recognition. It was about the impact she had on the wrestling community. Leva Bates was proving that you didn't need to fit the typical mold to make a difference in the wrestling world. Her rise to fame was not without its challenges. The pressure of being in the public eye, of living up to the expectations that came with success, weighed heavily on her. But Leva never wavered. She stayed true to the character she had created. Even when faced with the demands of a larger audience, Blue Pants was no longer just a name. It was a symbol of perseverance, individuality, and authenticity in an industry that often rewards conformity. Leva Bates' rise to fame wasn't just a story of success. It was a story of defying expectations, of breaking through barriers, and of proving that being true to oneself could lead to greatness. Her journey to the top of the wrestling world was a testament to the power of persistence, the value of authenticity, and the incredible ability of a wrestler to connect with their fans in ways that go beyond the physicality of the sport. In this chapter of her career, Leva Bates, the woman behind Blue Pants, achieved the recognition she had long fought for. But more than that, she became a beacon of hope for those who felt overlooked or underestimated, showing the world that it's not about being the biggest or the strongest, but about being yourself and fighting for what you believe in. The glitz and glamour of fame often conceal the challenges that accompany a successful career. For Leva Bates, her rise to fame in the wrestling world was filled with moments of triumph and recognition. But it also came at a cost. Behind the scenes of her increasing popularity were struggles that tested her both mentally and physically. The road to success, especially in a cutthroat industry like professional wrestling, is rarely without sacrifice. As Leva's career began to flourish, she was faced with the pressure of living up to the growing expectations from fans, promoters, and the wrestling community. The character of Blue Pants, once a fun and quirky persona, had transformed into something much bigger, a symbol of perseverance, a beloved figure who represented the underdog. With this newfound recognition came an overwhelming weight of responsibility. One of the first major challenges Leva faced was maintaining her authenticity. When she first created Blue Pants, it was an expression of who she was, a unique blend of humor, relatability, and resilience. But as her fame grew, so did the pressure to keep the character fresh and interesting. Wrestling fans are notoriously fickle, and they expect constant innovation. Leva found herself trapped between staying true to Blue Pants' core essence while also adapting the character to keep her relevant in an ever-evolving wrestling landscape. The struggle to maintain the balance between authenticity and entertainment began to take a toll on her. Moreover, The world of professional wrestling is notoriously demanding. The physical and emotional toll it takes on the body is immense. Leva, like many others in the industry, faced countless injuries, some minor, some more serious, that often left her struggling to keep going. Wrestling requires a unique blend of strength, agility, and stamina, and even the smallest injury can have a profound impact on performance. Leva faced numerous injuries, from sprained ankles to more significant issues that required time off to heal. But the pressures of maintaining a high level of performance didn't allow her much room to rest. There was always a next match, a next show, and a constant need to stay in the public's eye. The physical toll wasn't the only challenge Leva faced. As a woman in a male-dominated industry, she often found herself battling sexism and discrimination. Despite the increasing recognition of female wrestlers in mainstream promotions, the wrestling world still operated within a framework that often sidelined women or relegated them to secondary roles. Leva's struggles with being taken seriously were compounded by the perception that women wrestlers couldn't achieve the same level of success or respect as their male counterparts. There were times when Leva found herself having to fight for the same opportunities that her male colleagues had. She was often overlooked in favor of more marketable wrestlers, and the industry's gender bias would sometimes be hard to ignore. But rather than succumb to these barriers, Leva used them as fuel to keep fighting. One of the most personal struggles Leva faced during this time was the toll it took on her mental health. While she was living the dream she had worked so hard for, there were moments when the pressure became overwhelming. As a public figure, Leva was subjected to constant scrutiny. Social media, a powerful tool for building her fan base, also became a space where critics and trolls could tear down her accomplishments. The online abuse she faced was often cruel and relentless, and Leva found herself questioning her worth both inside and outside of the ring. No amount of success could shield her from the emotional toll of public judgment, and at times, the negativity she encountered online was enough to make her doubt herself. Yet, despite the struggles and the emotional toll, Leva never gave up. In the face of mounting pressure, she remained steadfast in her determination. She found solace in her fans, the people who genuinely cared about her journey and who rooted for her even when the road seemed steep. Their love and support became a lifeline during the darkest moments. Leva also drew strength from her fellow wrestlers. Though the wrestling world can be a competitive and sometimes isolating environment, Leva found a sense of camaraderie and solidarity with other performers who understood the unique challenges they faced. Many of them had gone through similar struggles, and their shared experiences helped her to navigate her own personal challenges. The bond she formed with her peers became a vital source of support, especially when she faced moments of doubt or exhaustion. As Leva's career progressed, she also faced difficulties with the business side of wrestling. Promotions, especially large ones, often operate with a focus on maximizing profits, which can sometimes come at the expense of wrestlers' well-being. The politics of the industry, decisions made behind closed doors that affected who got pushed, who got opportunities, and who got sidelined, became an increasingly frustrating reality for Leva. It wasn't always about talent. It was about politics, appearances, and the whims of promoters. This harsh truth of the wrestling business led to moments of disillusionment, but it also pushed Leva to fight even harder for the respect and opportunities she deserved. One particularly difficult time in her career came when she faced a personal loss. The pressures of wrestling, combined with the emotional toll of her family's struggles, made it challenging to keep going. Wrestling, which had once been an escape and a passion, began to feel like an overwhelming burden. It was a time when Leva questioned whether she could continue in the industry at all. But once again, the support of her fans, her fellow wrestlers, and her own unyielding spirit helped her navigate through this period of uncertainty. During this time, Leva made a conscious decision to focus on mental health and self-care. She realized that in order to continue performing at her best, she needed to take care of herself, both physically and emotionally. She began seeking therapy to work through her struggles, something that was not often discussed in the wrestling community. Mental health, particularly for women in sports and entertainment, was a taboo subject. Yet, Leva's willingness to speak about her struggles opened the door for others to do the same. She became an advocate for mental health awareness within the wrestling community, encouraging others to prioritize their well-being just as much as their physical health. Her journey through personal struggles and challenges was not a smooth one, but it shaped her into the resilient individual she would become. It taught her the importance of self-advocacy, of surrounding herself with a strong support system, and of taking time to heal when needed. Leva Bates wasn't just fighting in the ring. She was fighting to maintain her sense of self, to balance the demands of fame with the realities of personal struggle, and to prove that even in the face of adversity, she was worthy of a place in the wrestling world. As the years went on, Leva Bates grew not only as a wrestler, but as a person. She learned to embrace the challenges she faced, knowing that each obstacle was a stepping stone to the stronger, more complete version of herself. Her story is a powerful reminder that even those who seem to have it all can face struggles that are invisible to the outside world, and that true strength comes from acknowledging those struggles and pushing forward. No matter how tough the road may be, Leva Bates' journey to the peak of her wrestling career was one marked by grit, perseverance, and an unwavering commitment to her craft. But it was also a journey of discovery, of understanding her place in the wrestling world and embracing the unique role she had carved out for herself. By the time Leva reached the height of her success, she had become a beloved figure in the industry, someone who not only excelled in the ring, but also left an indelible mark on the wrestling community. The first of Leva's peak moments came when she was fully embraced by the wrestling world as an underdog hero. Blue Pants, a character that had once been a playful gimmick, evolved into a symbol of resilience. Fans rallied behind her, drawn to her authenticity, her relatability, and her refusal to conform to the stereotypical image of a wrestler. Leva had something that was rare in the world of professional wrestling, a persona that was both powerful and accessible, capable of connecting with audiences from all walks of life. One of the key turning points in Leva's career came when she was given the opportunity to participate in high-profile matches with some of the biggest names in the industry. These matches not only showcased her skills in the ring, but also allowed her to demonstrate her ability to captivate a crowd. Her rise to prominence was not just about physical prowess, but about her ability to tell stories through her character. Leva Bates had mastered the art of creating compelling narratives in the ring, which is what set her apart from other wrestlers. As Blue Pants, Leva had the uncanny ability to engage the audience, to make them laugh, to make them cheer, and to make them care. Whether it was her quirky antics, her unexpected victories, or her battles against larger, more intimidating opponents, she had a way of drawing fans in. These interactions with the crowd were the hallmark of her success. Fans didn't just watch her. They felt like they were part of her journey. She wasn't just performing for them. She was inviting them to share in her story. Her matches became legendary not just for the physical action, but for the emotional connection they created. Leva understood that wrestling was about more than just athleticism. It was about creating moments that would stay with the audience long after the match ended. And it wasn't just about victories. It was about the struggles, the resilience, and the emotional payoff that came from overcoming the odds. This was where Leva excelled. She could tell a story in a way that made the audience feel as though they were living the journey with her. One of her most defining moments in wrestling came during a high-stakes match against a top contender. The stakes were high, and the pressure was immense. Yet, in the face of adversity, Leva delivered one of her most iconic performances. The match was intense, with both competitors pushing each other to their limits. But what made this match stand out was the raw emotion and determination Leva brought to the ring. It wasn't just a match, it was a testament to her resilience, her refusal to give up, and her belief in herself. When the match ended, Leva stood victorious, and the crowd erupted in cheers. It was a moment that solidified her place as one of the most beloved wrestlers in the industry. Another peak moment in Leva's career came when she was asked to participate in a major wrestling event that featured some of the best talent from around the world. This event, which was broadcast to a global audience, was the perfect opportunity for Leva to showcase her unique brand of wrestling. The event featured a mix of legends, rising stars, and established talent. But it was Leva who stood out. She wasn't just another participant. She was the heart and soul of the event. Her performance captivated audiences worldwide. And in that moment, Leva Bates became a household name. These peak moments were not just about the victories. They were about the legacy Leva was building. She was more than just a wrestler. She was a trailblazer. As a woman in a male-dominated industry, Leva's success was a powerful statement. She had proven that women could be more than just side characters in the wrestling world. They could be main eventers. They could tell their own stories. They could hold their own against the best in the business. Leva Bates' success was a reminder that gender should never define the limits of a person's potential. Leva's legacy was built on this foundation, on the idea that authenticity, resilience, and passion could change the narrative. She wasn't just a wrestler who succeeded in spite of the obstacles. She was a wrestler who succeeded because she had the courage to be herself. Her journey was one that inspired countless others to follow their own paths, to challenge the norms, and to embrace their unique qualities. Leva Bates had shown the world that being true to oneself was the key to success. As her career continued to soar, Leva began to mentor younger wrestlers, offering advice, guidance, and support to those who were just starting out in the industry. She became a role model for aspiring female wrestlers, showing them that it was possible to make a name for themselves without having to conform to traditional standards. Leva's impact on the next generation of wrestlers was immeasurable. She had become a beacon of hope for those who dreamed of following in her footsteps. But perhaps the most significant part of Leva Bates' legacy was her ability to transcend the wrestling ring. She had become a cultural icon, not just for her skills as a wrestler, but for her ability to connect with people on a deeper level. She was a symbol of perseverance, of fighting for your dreams, and of staying true to who you are. Even in the face of adversity, throughout her career, Leva became known for her charitable work and her advocacy for mental health awareness. She used her platform to raise awareness for causes that were close to her heart, using her fame to make a positive impact on the world. Her work outside of the ring further cemented her legacy as someone who was not only a talented wrestler, but also a compassionate and caring individual. As Leva looked back on her career, she could take pride in the fact that she had not only achieved her goals, but had also left a lasting impact on the wrestling world. She had helped redefine what it meant to be a female wrestler. She had broken down barriers and shattered stereotypes. And she had done it all while staying true to herself. Leva Bates' peak moments were not just about personal victories. They were about the victories she achieved for the entire wrestling community. She had opened doors for others, and in doing so, had paved the way for future generations of wrestlers to follow in her footsteps. Her legacy was one of empowerment, authenticity, and the relentless pursuit of one's dreams. She had proven that with determination, passion, and a willingness to be yourself, anything was possible. In the end, Leva Bates was more than just blue pants. She was a symbol of everything that wrestling could be at its best. A place where stories were told, where dreams were realized, and where the impossible became possible. And as her legacy continued to inspire the next wave of talent, Leva Bates' place in the history of wrestling was forever secured. The world of professional wrestling, like the athletes who inhabit it, is subject to the natural ebb and flow of time. As Leva Bates' career began to reach its peak, there was a lingering, unspoken truth that every wrestler, no matter how successful, must face the inevitable. Time catches up with us all. Leva's ascent to stardom had been marked by triumphs, memorable moments, and a legacy that few could deny. Yet, as with all great careers, there would come a time when the physical demands of the sport would become too great, and the challenges of maintaining success would begin to take their toll. In the wrestling industry, athletes are often pushed to the limit, both physically and mentally. The grueling schedule, the constant travel, the punishing physicality of the sport, these elements are integral to the business, but they also leave a lasting impact on the body. Leva, who had always been resilient and dedicated to her craft, found herself facing the physical repercussions of a career spent in the ring. Injuries, some of them lingering from earlier in her career, began to take their toll on her body. The aches, the pains, the muscle strains, all became a constant companion. Yet, for Leva, walking away was never an easy decision. Wrestling had been her passion for so long that the thought of letting go seemed unfathomable. As she reached the latter part of her career, the physical challenges grew more pronounced. It wasn't just the injuries that were affecting her, it was the wear and tear on her body, the cumulative effect of years of high-impact matches. For a wrestler like Leva, who had spent countless hours in the ring honing her craft, the idea of stepping away from it all was a difficult one. She had built her identity around wrestling, around the character of Blue Pants, and she had always felt like there was more to give, more to prove. Yet, the reality of aging, the reality of physical limitations, became impossible to ignore. The wrestling world is known for its brutality, but perhaps the hardest battle for Leva in her later years was the mental and emotional struggle of deciding when to step back. Unlike other athletes who may have experienced a sudden or dramatic decline in their abilities, Leva faced a gradual realization that she could no longer perform at the same level that had made her a star. It was a quiet, almost painful process, one where the passion she had once felt for the ring was tempered by the understanding that her body could no longer sustain the relentless demands of the sport. Despite this, Leva was not someone who could simply fade away. She had a deep sense of pride in her work and in the legacy she had built. The decision to take a step back was not one that came easily. It was something she fought against for as long as she could. There were times when she would push through the pain, telling herself that she could keep going, that she could return to the ring for just one more match, one more chance to prove herself. But eventually, the reality of the situation set in. Leva knew that it was time to make room for new talent, to pass the torch to the next generation, and to focus on her health and well-being. In the midst of this transition, Leva also faced significant personal challenges. The wrestling industry, with all its demands and pressures, had often left little room for a normal life outside the ring. For years, Leva had been consumed by the pursuit of her career, and in doing so, she had sacrificed many aspects of her personal life. Relationships were strained, and the emotional toll of a career spent on the road had left her feeling disconnected from those closest to her. As she began to slow down and reflect on her career, Leva realized that part of the struggle was not just physical. It was about finding balance. The realization that she needed to take time for herself, to heal both physically and emotionally, became a pivotal turning point in her journey. Leva's decision to step away from the ring was also influenced by the changing landscape of wrestling itself. The industry was evolving, and the demands placed on wrestlers were shifting. Leva, who had built her career on being different, on breaking the mold, found herself in a world that was becoming more polished, more corporate, and more focused on spectacle than the authenticity she had built her career on. As the wrestling business increasingly focused on larger-than-life personas, Leva felt that her role as Blue Pants, one so innovative and unique, was being overshadowed by the new generation of wrestlers who were pushing the boundaries of what it meant to be a superstar. The decline wasn't just about her physical limitations. It was about the shifting dynamics of the industry. Leva had always prided herself on being genuine and authentic. But the business was changing. The character of Blue Pants, once a symbol of resistance to the typical wrestling stereotype, began to feel out of place in an era that was increasingly focused on hyper-competitive and larger-than-life characters. As much as she loved the wrestling world, Leva knew that her time in the ring was drawing to a close. But this wasn't a story of defeat. It was a story of transformation. Leva Bates, the resilient underdog who had fought for her place in the wrestling world, wasn't going to disappear. She had earned a place in the history of professional wrestling. And even if she could no longer perform at the level she once had, she knew that her legacy would live on. Leva began to shift her focus from competing in the ring to mentoring the next generation of wrestlers. She became a coach, a mentor, and a teacher, passing on the lessons she had learned over the years. Leva's journey wasn't over. It was evolving. Throughout this period of transition, Leva found herself reflecting on the career she had built. She thought back to the early days when she had first stepped into the ring, unsure of herself but determined to make a name for herself. She thought about the sacrifices she had made and the struggles she had faced, both in and out of the ring, and she thought about the fans, the people who had supported her, who had cheered her on, and who had believed in her when no one else did. The sense of gratitude Leva felt for her fans was overwhelming. They had been with her every step of the way. From her first match to her final bow, Leva's reflection was not one of regret. There was no bitterness or resentment. Instead, it was a deep sense of satisfaction. She had lived her dream. She had fought hard for her place in the wrestling world. And she had succeeded in ways that many people could only dream of. Her legacy wasn't defined by a single match or a championship belt. It was defined by the impact she had on the people around her, by the doors she had opened for others, and by the example she set as a wrestler who refused to be anything other than herself. As Leva looked back on her career, she realized that the challenges she had faced, both physical and emotional, had shaped her into the person she was today. She was no longer just Blue Pants. She was a woman who had faced adversity head-on, who had fought through pain, and who had emerged stronger on the other side. And while her time in the ring may have come to an end, her story was far from over. Leva Bates had written her chapter in the history of professional wrestling. And now it was time for her to turn the page to the next chapter. In this final stage of her journey, Leva found peace. She had done everything she had set out to do, and she had done it on her terms. The ring may have been the place where she had built her legacy, but it was not the only place where she had meaning. Leva Bates' legacy was not just in her matches or her character. It was in the lives she had touched, the walls she had broken down, and the inspiration she had provided to countless others. The final challenges she faced were not ones of defeat, but of acceptance. She had given everything to the wrestling world, and now it was time to pass the torch and embrace the next phase of her life. As with all great journeys, the time inevitably comes to say goodbye. For Leva Bates, that moment was approaching, a moment filled with mixed emotions, but also a sense of fulfillment. After years of hard work, dedication, and sacrifice, Leva found herself standing at the crossroads of a new chapter in her life. Wrestling had been her passion, her identity, and her purpose for so long. Now, as the physical and emotional toll of the sport began to weigh on her. The reality of retirement became unavoidable, but even as she made the decision to step away from the ring, Leva knew that her farewell wasn't just the end of a career. It was the beginning of a new journey. Her legacy, built over years of sweat, passion, and authenticity, would live on long after her final match, and the wrestling world, forever changed by her contributions, would never forget the unique impact she had made. Leva's decision to retire wasn't an abrupt one. It had been a gradual realization, a quiet understanding that her body could no longer sustain the demands of the sport she loved. But it wasn't just about the physical strain. Leva's farewell was also about finding peace. It was about knowing that she had given everything to her craft, and that it was now time to step aside and make space for the next generation of wrestlers who would carry the torch forward. In the final days of her wrestling career, Leva's thoughts were not consumed with the matches or the accolades she had achieved. Instead, she reflected on the journey itself, the people she had met, the relationships she had built, and the moments that had shaped her into the woman she had become. Leva had always prided herself on her authenticity, and as she prepared for her farewell, she was determined to stay true to herself. The Blue Pants character had been a symbol of who she was, and it had resonated deeply with fans who appreciated her unique approach to wrestling. But now, it was time to say goodbye to the character and embrace the person she had always been. Her final match, the one that would mark the end of her wrestling career, was filled with emotion. The arena was packed with fans, many of whom had supported her from the very beginning. They had followed her journey, celebrated her triumphs, and stood by her during her struggles. And now, they were here to witness the final chapter of her story. For Leva, the match was more than just a performance. It was a celebration of everything she had accomplished and everything she had overcome. As she walked down the ramp for the last time, the familiar roar of the crowd filled her ears. It was the same sound she had heard thousands of times before, but this time, it felt different. There was a sense of finality, a bittersweetness in the air. The fans cheered louder than ever, showing their appreciation for the years of entertainment, heart, and soul that Leva had given them. They weren't just cheering for Blue Pants. They were cheering for Leva Bates, the woman who had fought tirelessly to be herself, to break barriers, and to leave her mark on the world of professional wrestling. The match itself was a testament to Leva's resilience. Despite the physical challenges she faced, she fought with the same passion and intensity that had defined her entire career. The crowd was on their feet, cheering her on as she executed her signature moves, the ones that had made her famous. But there was also a deep emotional undercurrent to the match, a sense of closure, of knowing that this was the last time she would step into the ring as a performer. As the match reached its conclusion, Leva stood in the center of the ring, soaking in the love and admiration from the audience. She had given everything she had to this moment, and as she looked around at the sea of fans who had supported her throughout her career, she knew that her journey had been worth every sacrifice. After the match, Leva took the microphone in her hand. The arena fell silent as she prepared to address the fans one final time. Her voice was steady, but there was an undeniable emotion behind her words. She thanked the fans for their unwavering support, for being with her through every victory and every defeat. She spoke of the importance of being true to oneself, of never giving up on one's dreams, and of the power of authenticity. These were the values that had defined her career, and they were the values she wanted to leave behind. With her words, Leva Bates closed a chapter on her wrestling career. She didn't need a grand farewell or a tearful exit. What mattered was that she had done it on her own terms. Her farewell wasn't marked by sadness, but by gratitude. Gratitude for the fans who had followed her, for the fellow wrestlers who had supported her, and for the opportunities she had been given. Most importantly, she was grateful for the journey itself, the highs, the lows, the struggles, and the triumphs that had made her who she was. In the years that followed, Leva Bates continued to be a part of the wrestling world. Though no longer as an active competitor, she became a mentor, a teacher, and a source of inspiration for the next generation of wrestlers. Her influence extended beyond the ring, as she continued to speak out on important issues like mental health, women's empowerment, and the importance of staying true to oneself in a world that often demands conformity. Leva's impact was felt not just in the wrestling world, but in the lives of those she had touched throughout her career. Her farewell was not an end, it was a new beginning. Leva Bates had left her mark on the world of professional wrestling, and her legacy would live on for generations to come. The fans who had cheered for her, the wrestlers who had admired her, and the countless others who had been inspired by her journey would carry her memory forward. Leva Bates may have said goodbye to the ring, but she would never be forgotten. Her story was one of resilience, authenticity, and the unwavering belief that anyone could achieve greatness, no matter the obstacles in their way. In the end, Leva Bates was more than just a wrestler. She was a symbol of what it means to be true to yourself and to never give up on your dreams, no matter where they take you. As the final moments of her career passed and the crowd's applause echoed through the arena, Leva Bates walked off into the future, grateful, fulfilled, and ready to take on whatever came next. And with that, the world of professional wrestling bid farewell to one of its most beloved and enduring stars. Leva Bates' journey in professional wrestling stands as a testament to the power of perseverance, authenticity, and the unyielding spirit to break through the boundaries of expectation. Her career, built on a foundation of struggle, resilience, and self-discovery, became a symbol not just for the wrestling community, but for anyone who has ever faced adversity and fought to carve their own path in a world that often demands conformity. Leva's story is one that transcends a ring. It is a narrative of overcoming the limitations imposed by others, of defying the standards of beauty, strength, and success that dominate the professional wrestling industry. It is a story of a woman who fought for respect, recognition, and a place at the table, not through grand gestures or flashy performances, but by staying true to herself. She was never the biggest or the strongest, but she was undoubtedly one of the most compelling and influential figures in the sport. A character who resonated with fans because she was unapologetically herself. From the moment she stepped into the ring, Leva Bates understood that wrestling was more than just about athleticism. It was about storytelling, about creating emotional connections with the audience, and about showing up as an authentic version of oneself. And this is what made Blue Pants stand out. The character wasn't defined by extravagant costumes or high-flying moves. It was defined by relatability, humor, and heart. Blue Pants became a symbol of the everyman, or in this case, every woman, who fought for their place in the world, and in doing so, earned the respect of fans, peers, and the wrestling industry itself. Her journey wasn't always easy. There were times when Leva faced rejection, doubts, and obstacles that seemed insurmountable. There were moments when she questioned whether she would ever be seen as more than just a novelty in a world that was increasingly focused on spectacle and physicality. But through it all, she remained true to her passion. Her authenticity became her strength. And it was this strength that allowed her to build a legacy that would last long beyond her final match. As Leva retired from active competition, the wrestling world looked back on her contributions with admiration. She had proven that wrestling was a platform where authenticity could shine, and that it wasn't just the big names with larger-than-life personas who could captivate audiences. Leva's career had shown that being yourself, no matter how unconventional that self may be, was the key to success in an industry that often valued spectacle over substance. Leva's legacy extends far beyond the matches, the titles, and the iconic moments in the ring. She had become a mentor, a role model, and an inspiration for countless wrestlers, especially women, who had been told that they weren't cut out for the sport. Leva's success was proof that there was no one-size-fits-all mold for a wrestler. She had broken barriers, not by conforming to the standards of the industry, but by creating a space where she could be herself. Her impact wasn't confined to the wrestling world. Either, Leva Bates became a vocal advocate for mental health awareness, women's rights, and the importance of being true to oneself in a world that constantly tries to shape individuals into something they're not. She used her platform to raise awareness for causes close to her heart, and in doing so, she became more than just a wrestler. She became a symbol of strength, resilience, and compassion. Her willingness to share her own struggles with mental health and to speak out about the challenges women face in male-dominated industries paved the way for future generations to do the same. Leva Bates' legacy is not just about the victories she achieved in the ring, but about the doors she opened for others. She was a trailblazer, someone who fought for a place in the wrestling world at a time when the industry was dominated by men and stereotypes. She showed the world that wrestling was not just a sport for the physically imposing, but a place for anyone with a passion, heart, and determination to succeed. But perhaps the most important part of Leva Bates' legacy is the inspiration she has provided to those who follow in her footsteps. Leva's story is one of empowerment, not just for women in wrestling, but for anyone who has ever felt like they didn't fit the conventional mold. Her success proves that greatness is not defined by appearance or strength, but by the ability to remain true to who you are, no matter the odds. As time passes, the wrestling world will continue to evolve, with new stars emerging and new stories being written. But Leva Bates' influence will always be felt. She was a pioneer, a champion of authenticity, and a shining example of what it means to stay true to oneself. Her story, her struggles, and her triumphs will continue to inspire not just wrestlers, but anyone who has ever faced the challenge of defining themselves in a world that often tries to tell them who they should be. In the years following her retirement, Leva continued to be involved in the wrestling community as a coach, a mentor, and a commentator. She shared her knowledge with the next generation of wrestlers, helping them navigate the world of professional wrestling with the same authenticity and determination that had driven her. Through her teaching and guidance, Leva ensured that the values she had fought for during her career would be passed down to those who came after her. While Leva Bates may no longer be competing in the ring, her impact on the wrestling world is undeniable. She was a catalyst for change, a woman who defied the odds and proved that being yourself was the most powerful weapon in the world of professional wrestling. Her legacy is one that will inspire future generations of wrestlers, fans, and individuals to embrace their uniqueness, to fight for their place in the world, and to never stop pursuing their dreams. Leva Bates' career may have come to a close, but her story will never end. It will live on in the hearts and minds of the fans who cheered for her, the wrestlers who learned from her, and the countless people who were inspired by her journey. Leva Bates may have said goodbye to the ring, but her legacy will continue to shine brightly, a beacon for all those who follow in her footsteps, proving that authenticity, resilience, and passion are the keys to leaving a lasting impact on the world. And so, the curtain falls on the wrestling career of Leva Bates, but her story and the lessons she has taught us will remain forever etched in the history of professional wrestling, a reminder that the greatest legacy we leave is the one we create by staying true to ourselves.